Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the lowland jungles of ancient Mesoamerica, where the air hangs thick with the scent of crushed leaves and humidity, and the only thing louder than the monkeys howling in the canopy is the quiet intensity of Maya math. You've stumbled into a village where not much happens quickly, including history, and today just happens to be the day they expect the sun to vanish for a bit, no big deal. You walk barefoot over cool, packed earth dust, rising gently around your ankles. The thatched roofs sway softly in the early breeze, and in the distance, you can hear the low mumble of elders arguing over corn measurements. The village is already awake, but not in a hurry. Nothing here really is. In the heart of the village, beneath a carved stela depicting what might be a crocodile, wearing a feathered headdress, a group of elders sits cross-legged in a circle. They're unrolling a long sheet of bark paper codex, carefully inked with jagged glyphs and tiny dots. One elder squints, then taps a section with a wooden pointer. Another nods and sips from a carved gourd. They are preparing for the day, not the eclipse, but the next phase of the long count calendar, which has an annoying habit of aligning with snack time. You sit nearby, and nobody minds. Tourists aren't a thing here, but you look like you've got good manners. One old man whose earlobes stretch impressively low from heavy jade plugs gives you a nod that means something like watch and learn, or at least don't interrupt. The codex is remarkable. It's been passed through generations, handwritten with meticulous care, updated only by those who've earned the right. It contains calendar glyphs, many of which deal with planting cycles, festivals, and celestial alignments. Hidden among those symbols, if you squint, or let's be honest, pretend to squint, is the notation for a solar eclipse. Today, now before you start imagining chaos villagers running around with baskets on their heads or shouting about the end of days, you should know the Maya were way past that kind of drama. This isn't their first eclipse. In fact, they've predicted it down to the half-day with eerie accuracy. But as you'll soon discover, they're mostly annoyed that it'll mess with lunch. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, while you're at it, comment below where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this sleepy little village reaches. Now dim, the lights maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You follow the elders as they shuffle to the edge of the village, where the jungle parts just slightly like it knows better than to interfere with math. A towering step pyramid looms nearby, its stone stairs uneven from centuries of sandals and probably more than a few stubbed toes. You begin your climb behind the elders, the scent of crushed herbs wafting from their woven shoulder pouches. Somewhere behind you, a child laughs, and someone drops a gourd of beans with a very loud thud. No one flinches. At the top of the observatory temple, a wide platform reveals a horizon framed by treetops and distant hills. The sky is perfectly blue with that slightly smug expression it gets when it knows something's about to happen. One elder lifts a carved wooden sighting tool, basically two sticks with a notch, and holds it up toward the sun's predicted path. Historians still argue whether these observatories were used primarily for astronomy or ritual power projection. But today, it's both. And maybe a little bit of "we told you so" for the younger apprentices who are busy trying to sneak bites of tamales behind the altar. Suddenly, one elder lets out a soft, "aha," not dramatic, just satisfied. He's found the mark. The sun is on schedule. The eclipse is still several hours away, But this confirmation brings a kind of collective exhale. No need to adjust the timeline. The gods will be punctual. How typical. You lean on a warm stone block and glance around. Everything here feels so deliberate. The shape of the temple, the placement of sight lines. Even the moss seems to grow with purpose. The Maya were meticulous in their celestial observations, not out of superstition alone, but because the sky told them when to plant, when to harvest, and occasionally when the world would dip briefly into weirdness. The sun glints off a gold nose ornament one elder wears, and you realize nobody's scared. They're curious, or maybe bored. It's hard to tell. One elder stretches. Another starts humming tunelessly. It's like waiting in line at the post office, but the stamps are cosmic, and your mail carrier is a sun god who likes dramatic entrances. There's a moment of stillness, broken only by a macaw screeching from somewhere behind you. Then one elder rolls up the codex and gently smacks an apprentice who's dozed off. The message is clear, predictions confirmed. Time to go back down and start the real work. Chili paste doesn't grind itself. As you descend the pyramid steps slowly, your hand brushes the wall. You feel the faint carvings of a glyph, a jaguar, a number, a symbol that may mean eclipse or bean price adjustment. Honestly, with Maya glyphs, it could be both. The jungle air wraps around you again, and as you step back into the village's shade, everything continues as if nothing strange is coming, which is perhaps the most interesting thing of all. You've barely dusted the jungle grit from your toes before the elders have already shuffled away, leaving behind only the faint smell of old tobacco and crushed herbs. Curious, and with nowhere else to be, because, let's be honest, you're here for the long haul. You follow a narrow dirt path that snakes past a row of humming beehive-shaped homes and up toward the highest point in the village, the observatory temple. This time you take your climb a little slower. The steps are steep, uneven, and clearly designed by someone who either didn't believe in leg days or only believed in leg days. By the fifth step, your calves start negotiating terms. But you push on, guided by the soft thudding of sandals ahead and the distant lazy bark of a dog who's never once chased anything. At the top, you're greeted not with dramatic fanfare or chants, but with a quiet gathering of star priests reclining around a low stone platform. One of them is absent-mindedly carving a stick. Another is doodling stars onto a clay tablet. No one seems very stressed, which feels strange considering, the whole sky is supposed to go dark soon. These priests, tall, calm, and slightly annoyed by humidity, are the village's designated sky watchers. And today's a bit of a letdown. They've seen eclipses before. They predicted this one. It's like waiting for a rerun of your favorite show, only it's broadcast from the sun, and you already know the ending. One of the priests adjusts his elaborate headdress, which is a masterpiece of over-engineering. Feathers, beads, animal teeth. If an arts and crafts explosion had spiritual significance, this would be it. Another priest wears an enormous nose bar that jiggles slightly when he laughs, which he does when a monkey up in the nearby ceiba tree flings a fruit directly at the scribe's scroll. Accuracy impressive. You take a seat nearby. The heat rising off the stone presses against your skin like a thick wool blanket that someone forgot to wash. It's oddly comforting, though, like sitting too close to a campfire with nowhere else to be. You watch as one priest pulls out a bark paper chart covered in spirals and dots. He points toward the sky, then toward the paper, and mutters something that definitely includes the word Chak-Ek, the Maya name for Venus. Ah yes, Venus the diva of the ancient night sky. Historians still argue whether the Maya tracked Venus primarily for warfare timing or agricultural planning. One camp thinks it was basically a celestial calendar. The other says it was a cosmic version of should we attack today. Either way, the priests keep one eye on the morning star, one eye on the sun, and about 60% of their attention on whether lunch is running late. The observatory platform isn't just for sun gazing. It's acoustically designed, shaped to bounce even the quietest whisper back to the listener, which means when a junior apprentice sneezes from behind a pillar, everyone turns. He looks mortified. A priest raises one eyebrow. Another, perhaps the senior-most, offers him a piece of tamale, wrapped in a banana leaf, a peace offering, or maybe just a snack for surviving public embarrassment. Now about the tools. You expect telescopes, or at least something vaguely impressive looking. Instead, they use a clever combination of shadow markers, aligned stone pillars, and hand-sized notched boards. One known as an ecliptic sighting tool is literally a carved piece of wood with two holes and a line drawn in red pigment. Not flashy, but wildly effective. Using this, the priests have triangulated the expected moment the moon will begin to slip in front of the sun. No fanfare, no countdowns, just a pointed look at the sky and a calm nod. Kind of like a sleepy librarian whispering, "The event is now." A hush falls over the platform, except it's not for awe. It's because someone's sandal strap just snapped and they're trying not to tumble down 48 steps in front of their boss. As the minutes slide by, one priest takes out a bowl filled with fine powder, chalky white with specks of ground mica. He begins to draw a sun glyph on the stone floor. Around it, tiny triangles indicate directional symbols, and a tiny figure, probably the sun god, Kinich Ahau, is drawn with exaggerated eyes and a slightly irritated frown. Apparently, even deities aren't morning people. Kinich Ahau isn't the type to rage or throw thunderbolts. He's more of a withdraws politely behind the moon type of god. His disappearing act during an eclipse is not seen as an omen, but rather as a divine power nap, a reset. You could probably relate. You squint upward. The sun's still blazing in the sky, bright and unbothered. A few clouds drift lazily past, probably unaware of their role in cosmic theater. But the priests continue their work, murmuring softly, like librarians updating a card catalog no one asked for, but everyone depends on. The observatory itself, by the way, isn't really a standalone structure. It's part of a larger complex with ceremonial altars, small storage chambers filled apparently with dried maize, and one suspiciously heavy jar labeled "Do Not Drop," and a water reservoir designed to reflect the sky. The Maya believed in microcosms, earth mirroring sky rituals mirroring celestial order. Even their buildings were built to align with solstices and equinoxes. It's all very precise, and let's face it, a little smug. As the wind shifts and the scent of distant cooking fires reaches the platform, one priest stands and stretches arms wide. The others follow. It's not reverence, it's time to go. The real show won't start for a while yet, and they still have dried chili to rehydrate. You follow them down, back into the buzz of the village. The observatory sits silent again. The jungle presses in, and the sun, completely unbothered, continues climbing the sky like it's got nothing scheduled but a coffee break. By the time you reach the base of the observatory temple again, the village has shifted into what can only be described as mildly productive chaos. Smoke curls from a few open-air hearths. Dogs meander between sunspots like tiny four-legged gods. and children are already tired of doing whatever it is their parents told them to do. It smells like corn sweat and some kind of earthy resin that sticks to your nose like warm bread in the rain. You wander slowly back toward the main square, where a few low stone platforms sit in a casual circle. This is the social hub, the space for ceremonial rituals announcements, or just long conversations about how bananas are probably overrated. There a cluster of villagers sits cross-legged, weaving, grinding, chatting, and completely ignoring the astronomical drama scheduled for later today. This, you realize, is what truly impresses you. The Maya predicted a solar eclipse, mathematically, on purpose, using calendars and celestial calculations so precise that modern scholars still gape at them. And yet, no one here is panicking. No one is fasting, prostrating, or preparing sacrifices. The general attitude is somewhere between cool and mildly inconvenient. One woman even sighs and mutters something like, "Ugh, now I have to squint while grinding maize." So how did they know this eclipse was coming? It starts with their calendar systems. Plural. There wasn't just one calendar in Maya society. There were 3 overlapping like a cosmic Venn diagram that only 3 people in the village truly understood, and 2 of them were too old to climb the observatory stairs anymore. There's the Tzolk'in, a 260-day ritual calendar based on the combination of 20 named days and 13 numbers. Yes, it's weirdly elegant. Then there's the Hob, a 365-day solar calendar divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus a bonus 5-day. Please don't leave the house period called Wyeb. Lastly, the long count, the big boy. That's the one that tracks vast spans of time used to align historical events with cosmic movements. Using these tools, and no small amount of bark paper math, Maya astronomers calculated the recurrence of eclipses with surprising accuracy. Their knowledge of the moon's cycles, the sun's motion, and Venus's tantrums allowed them to pinpoint events that most cultures feared, worshipped, or just ignored entirely. And yet, one thing scholars still argue about is how much the general population cared. Was this elite knowledge reserved for the scribes and priests? Or did the average villager also know to maybe put off laundry on eclipse day? You pass by an elderly woman smoothing clay over a pot. She gives you a knowing look, the kind that says, "Oh yes, I know the sun's going to disappear. I just don't have time for that today." She's more focused on getting the decorative ridges right. Each one tells a story, some about gods, some about markets, and one she claims is just a fish she once dreamed about. You nod politely. Elsewhere, 2 men argue gently over the exact number of eclipse days their ancestors recorded. One says 8. The other insists it was 12, not counting the half eclipse that turned out to be a big cloud. A third man walks by and mutters, "It's 11." And they all nod because, let's face it, no one wants to fight before lunch. The air is heating up now. The shadows are sharpening, but still no tension. No gathering crowds. No anxious drum beats or ceremonial processions. A boy kicks a ball made from rubber tree sap toward a cluster of chickens who scatter like disgruntled temple guards. One chicken flies a little too high and lands in a basket of squash. No one notices but you and the chicken, who now looks strangely pleased. Somewhere near the plaza, a small shrine dedicated to Kinich Ahau glows in the mid-morning sun. The statue is a rounded carving, wide eyes, a curling tongue, and a large solar disk behind his head. The god of the sun, often associated with healing and music. On eclipse days, it's said he simply closes his eyes. A nap. A pause. That's it. No punishment, No rebuke. Just celestial quiet time. One elder walks past the shrine and gently adjusts a woven cloth laid before it, an offering of maize cacao and a tiny jade bead. Not out of fear, just respect. As if to say, we know you're busy today. Good luck up there. You sit near a food stall where a woman is stirring a thick drink made from roasted cacao water and a pinch of chili. She offers you a cup without a word. It's warm, slightly bitter, and wakes up your mouth just enough to remind you you're alive. She doesn't mention the eclipse, but she does complain about the wind drying her tortillas too fast. A small group gathers nearby to tell stories. Not myths, really, just sleepy retellings of that one time Uncle Shaman got stuck in a granary for 3 hours and claimed to have received wisdom from a squirrel. Everyone laughs. One man leans over and says he now refuses to eat squash. Says it offends the squirrel. You both nod solemnly. The conversation, the chores, the laughter, they all keep moving as if the eclipse were a minor plot point in an otherwise very slow novel. Even the village dog is unbothered, though he does keep glancing at the sun suspiciously. He's seen things. As the sun climbs higher, you start to feel the weight of it pressing down. The warmth seeps into your bones. You lie back against a smooth stone and watch a single vulture circle lazily overhead. Probably bored. Definitely judging you. Soon, the light will start to change. But not yet. For now, it's just another quiet day in a civilization that mapped the stars, measured time, and still thought your tortilla folding technique was deeply inefficient. You stretch out beneath the minimal shade of a wooden awning, squinting into the shimmering heat, while the village goes about its business in a way that's so profoundly unbothered, it's practically contagious. The eclipse. Sure, it's coming. But first, someone has to finish mixing that batch of chili paste, and someone else is missing their bone needle again. Across the plaza, a group of women kneels around a large flat stone, chatting idly while grinding maize with steady rhythmic movements. Shh. Scrape. Shh. Scrape. It's the soundtrack of daily life here, soft and constant like the village's own heartbeat. The conversation is light. Someone's uncle is courting. Again, someone's parrot keeps swearing at the wrong gods, and someone's neighbor claimed he saw a cloud shaped like a jaguar yesterday. An omen, or possibly just a jaguar-shaped cloud. You wander through dodging a toddler who's determined to chase a beetle with a stick. His mother doesn't even look up. She's got fish to gut and zero patience for beetle-chasing drama. As you turn a corner, you come upon a courtyard where 3 elders are haggling over a trade deal. 2 clay bowls for 1 obsidian blade and a basket of fermented honey drink. The deal is tense, not because of the items involved, but because one elder insists that the eclipse will mess with the trade spirits if the blade isn't properly wrapped in red cloth. The others disagree. Loudly, a 4th elder strolls by and mumbles something about wrapping everything in red cloth just to be safe. That's the compromise. The honey drink is consumed almost immediately. You pass a garden where a girl is picking herbs with a look of absolute seriousness. She informs you that she's preparing a remedy for itchy feet. You glance at your own, which are suspiciously itchy now. She nods gravely, confirming your unspoken diagnosis. It's probably the eclipse, she says. It usually is. Meanwhile, back near the central platform, 2 men are adjusting a ceremonial pole that leans ever so slightly to the left. One wants to realign it with the star charts. The other wants to align it with his wife's weaving hut, claiming that it helps him find his way home after too much pulque. They settle on a middle ground that satisfies neither astronomy nor alcohol-fueled navigation, but at least the pole stops wobbling. Not far off, a young boy is carving a toy bird from a piece of hardwood. His technique is questionable, but his enthusiasm is undeniable. He explains to you in great detail that this bird will fly during the eclipse and scare away the moon's shadow. You nod solemnly. He beams. You suspect his toy bird will mostly scare chickens. Everywhere you go, the story is the same. People are aware of the eclipse, but no one's altering their day for it. Historians still debate whether the Maya public thought of eclipses as warnings, blessings, or just a really weird way for the sky to take a break. But here in this moment, it seems like the dominant feeling is mild indifference. A man lounging in a hammock calls you over. He waves a piece of smoked fish like a fan gesturing to the sun above. Won't be long now, he says. But don't tell my wife. I told her I was fixing the roof. You glance at his roof. It is not fixed. He shrugs. The truth is, the Maya had a long-standing relationship with celestial rhythms. They didn't just measure time, they lived inside it. Their days weren't isolated units. They were part of a vast spiraling continuum, where gods played dice with moons, and farmers planted corn in sync with the shadows of temples. So if the sun disappears for a bit, that's just time doing its thing. Back at the weaving hut, two sisters are arguing gently over dye colors. One insists the reddish tone she's using is called Eclipse Crimson. The other says it's definitely just bean stew brown. They ask your opinion. You panic and say it looks like sunset before rain, which wins you both their approval and a handful of pumpkin seeds. A few children scamper past wearing jaguar masks and giggling. They shout something about catching the sky serpent before it eats the sun. It's part game, part tradition, and entirely adorable. One trips and lands in a pile of gourds. No one cries. A nearby elder chuckles and tells him even gods fall down sometimes. That's the Maya way myth blended with mud. The marketplace is still in full swing. Vendors shout about cactus fruit, polished shells, and herbs that definitely cure hiccups, heartbreak, or maybe both. A merchant tries to convince you that his obsidian mirror lets you see through time. You catch your reflection, looking sunburnt and unconvinced. He throws in a clay whistle shaped like a toad. Sold. You take a break near the cacao stand, where a woman stirs a heavy pot with a stick longer than your arm. She's humming a tune that you're pretty sure is about frogs falling in love. You ask if she's worried about the eclipse. She shrugs. If the sun forgets to come back, we'll get more rest. The rhythm of life carries on comfortably tethered to the ancient understanding that celestial oddities are just that odd, not ominous. The gods might be powerful, but they aren't easily impressed. And they certainly don't stop anyone from gossiping about a neighbor's questionable sandals. The heat presses in again, and you settle into a shaded corner near a fig tree. You close your eyes for a moment and hear nothing but the wind, the soft chatter of children, and the unmistakable scrape of someone trying and failing to sharpen a knife against a gourd. Somewhere in the distance, the first soft murmurs begin, a subtle shift in tone. The light is starting to change. The light's change is subtle at first, so soft, so slow, that it almost feels like a cloud drifting across the sun. You blink and look up. No clouds, Just a gentle fading, like someone has slowly dimmed the world by a fraction of a candle's flicker. No trumpets, no panic, not even a raised eyebrow. Instead, a man nearby mutters something about how this would be the perfect time to finally repair the hole in his roof, since it's a bit less blinding now. He doesn't move. You suspect the hole will still be there next week. Life continues, and the eclipse doesn't cancel errands. A group of teens carry a bundle of roof thatch up a wobbly ladder. You overhear one complaining about the itchiness. Another is more concerned that the shadow falling over the yard will make the dyeing process too slow. Priorities. Across the square, a group of artisans are delicately inlaying turquoise into a ceremonial mask. One of them pauses to inspect the shifting shadows across the stone, then casually shields his eyes with a palm frond. "Nice," he murmurs. "Cooler light. The eclipse is coming." But first, the laundry must be rotated. You round the corner to see three women standing by a low stone wall, arms full of damp tunics and jaguar print loincloths, arguing about the correct position to hang them in eclipse conditions. One swears that putting them facing north will confuse the moon's shadow and bless the wearer with long life. Another claims that's a myth invented by someone who didn't want to carry laundry to the East Terrace. The third just shrugs and starts hanging hers wherever the breeze is strongest. As the shadows stretch longer and the sunlight takes on an odd silvery tone, you hear someone shout, "Where is my bead?" It's urgent, panicked even. A young woman is pacing in frantic circles near a carved bench, hands flailing dramatically. "Which bead?" a boy asks, chewing on a mango slice. "The jaguar tooth bead, the one from my eclipse bracelet." The boy nods sagely, as if this explains everything. "You dropped it by the maize grinder, probably." "I did not. That was the yellow one. This one is the important one." She sprints off in a flurry of jangling jewelry and half-muttered curses aimed at celestial bodies. This, it seems, is the most serious crisis of the day. Meanwhile, a small group of children is stacking rocks. Not in any cosmically significant way, they're just making a tower to see who can build the tallest before it topples. The smallest among them glances at the darkening sky and whispers, "The sky serpent's almost here," then goes right back to stacking. You pass an elderly man trying to coax a stubborn gourd off its vine. He tugs. It doesn't budge. He sighs. Always gets clingy. During eclipses, he mutters to no one in particular. Farther along, a pair of young men are repainting glyphs on a communal wall. The paint is thick and sticky, made from crushed insects and tree sap. One of them steps back, looks at the wall, then glances at the sky. "We should hurry," he says, "or the shadows will stretch the lines." "What's the rush?" his friend replies. "It's not like the gods grade on contrast." Scholars still debate the deeper meaning behind some of these community murals. Were they educational, political, literal, cosmic maps? One glyph appears to be a snake eating a rabbit beneath a jaguar moon. Another might be a woman yelling at a man holding too many bananas. The interpretations are fluid. In the courtyard, the scent of roasted cacao and squash fills the air as lunch is quietly prepared. No feast, no sacred ritual. Just another midday meal, shaded by the eclipse's approaching shadow. You watch as a woman gently fans the coals while humming a lullaby about a turtle who never pays his debts. She notices your curious look. "You're wondering if the food tastes different during eclipses," she says, without missing a beat. "It doesn't. But everyone says it does, so I add more salt." Behind her, someone stirs a pot, and accidentally knocks over a pile of peppers. They scatter dramatically across the dirt. The cook stares at them, sighs deeply, and mutters, "Figures." Sun goes dark, and the peppers riot. A child tugs on your sleeve. She holds up a folded cloth doll, its tiny face painted with the sun and moon. "This is Ixchel," she says seriously. "She's the moon goddess. She's cranky today." You nod. Cranky moon goddesses are a mood. Near the edge of the village, you see a few men reinforcing the perimeter wall, not out of fear, but because they've been meaning to do it. And now, the light makes it more tolerable. One comments, "Better to fix it now than when the rains come and the goats stage another escape." This is what you're starting to understand. In this Maya village, a solar eclipse isn't a rupture in reality. It's just a slightly dimmer day with better lighting for chores. The cosmology holds space for magic and mystery, but the people, they have beans to count roofs, to patch beads to find, and clothes to dry. A rooster crows prematurely. A baby laughs. Somewhere in the jungle, a howler monkey announces the slow arrival of twilight with all the urgency of a sleepy librarian whispering closing time. You lean back on a sun-warmed wall. The light now has a silvery glaze, as if the whole world is passing through a filter you didn't choose. And even though the big cosmic event is nearly here, there's something soothing about the fact that for most of the villagers today is just like any other, except a little dimmer and slightly saltier. Just when you think things might finally settle into a hush, someone shouts from across the courtyard, "Where is the boy?" There's always a boy. You follow the exasperated voice to the base of a carved pillar where a thin teenager is crouched, arms wrapped protectively around a roll of bark paper eyes, wide and guilty. He's the scribal apprentice, the junior to the junior assistant of the village's record keepers, and he's made a terrible mistake. He knows too much about the stars, too much about the moon's path, and far worse, far more dangerous, he has opinions, specifically about what the eclipse really means. He's been copying glyphs for months, sometimes upside down when the master scribe has fallen asleep. And in the margins of those careful texts, he's started doodling ideas, personal theories, creative interpretations, and oh dear, somewhat dramatic star demons with big teeth and snarky captions. You squat down next to him. He eyes you warily, then leans in to whisper, "They don't get it. The alignment isn't just an eclipse. It's a warning." His eyes dart upward. "The gods are trying to tell us something." "What's that?" you ask, trying to sound interested, but not invested. He hesitates. "That we should cancel the bean dance next month. The moon goddess might take offense." You nod with grave sympathy. The bean dance has been getting a little flashy. The older scribes, meanwhile, are arguing under the central awning. One insists that the apprentice's new glyph for partial obscuration of solar disk looks like a sad tortilla. Another grumbles that the kid should spend more time sharpening his reed pen and less time inventing lunar conspiracies. You quietly slip away. Historians still argue whether apprentices like him were truly allowed to contribute new knowledge or were mostly glorified ink fetchers. Some records show innovations emerging from junior scribes, new glyph variations, subtle shifts in myth. Others suggest their creative input was received about as well as an unsolicited fruitcake during famine season. But you have to admit, the kids' sketches are good. One drawing shows the moon as a sleepy serpent wrapping itself around the sun, sipping from a gourd. Another features a priest shouting, "Oops," while the eclipse unfolds. Honestly, that one feels a little too real. As you pass the edge of the marketplace again, you hear the apprentice's voice trailing behind you. If the moon eats the sun, and the sun comes back, is the moon just spitting it out? A woman stacking squash nearby snorts and mutters kids these days. She doesn't stop stacking. Down the path you find a quiet corner where a group of children are gathered around an older boy with a clay flute. He's telling his version of the eclipse myth, one that features a jealous hummingbird, a stolen sun disk, and a jaguar who's just trying to get a nap. It's loosely based on something real, but with more dramatic flair and sound effects. The children are entranced, leaning in mouths slightly open, occasionally gasping at key moments. One girl raises her hand and asks, "What happens if the hummingbird doesn't return the sun?" The storyteller pauses dramatically. Then the tortillas all burn. Forever. A collective gasp. One child looks at her lunch with new anxiety. The older villagers chuckle nearby. One woman leans over and tells you, "That's his version. In mine, the moon and sun are married and just needed space." She pops a roasted pumpkin seed into her mouth and adds, "Can't blame them." This is another truth of Maya. Life myths aren't rigid. They flex, evolve, stretch like the hammock ropes tied between generations. The gods aren't static. They gossip, they change sides, they borrow feathers. And so do their stories. You walk past a bench where the young apprentice has now relocated lying flat, with one hand over his forehead, dramatically whispering about the shadow serpents that will descend in 33 minutes, unless he finishes the poem he's writing on a banana leaf. He has, of course, forgotten how to spell the glyph for shadow. An older scribe hands him a gourd of water and says, "You know, when I was your age, I thought the stars were angry faces too." The boy sips grateful. "Then I found out I was looking at fireflies on my roof." You continue your slow walk past the stelae, tall and solemn, with ancient inscriptions, while the light thins ever so slightly more. Shadows grow stranger longer than they should be, as if the village is slowly tilting away from itself. A few people have gathered near the main altar now. Not because they're afraid, more because someone mentioned that the apprentice's wild scribbles were about to be read aloud, and let's face it, it's been a slow news day. The apprentice stands dramatically, holding up a sheet of folded bark paper. Today, the gods send us a whisper. He begins a flicker of shadow over the light, but not to frighten us, to remind us. Someone in the crowd coughs, to remind us, to pay attention. There's a polite smattering of nods. Someone claps once. The older scribe leans toward you and whispers, "Not bad." He left out the part where Kinichahao turns into a catfish, though. That was my favorite. The apprentice beams as the crowd disperses, though you notice most are heading toward the snack stand, not the stars. Even the best poetic warnings are still second to spicy roasted squash. The sky dims just a touch more, enough that a few birds start to settle in early. Enough that the apprentice squints up and mutters, "I told you it was coming." And honestly, you're starting to believe him. The village is humming now, but not from worry. It's the hum of a place slightly more aware of itself than usual. A few more glances skyward, a few more heads tilted in thought, but still no chaos, no dramatic prayers, just the sound of grinding stones, gossiping weavers, and the occasional flute practice squeak from a courtyard you politely pretend not to hear. You find yourself near the western edge of the village, where a group of older men are scratching numbers into a slab of limestone with bits of charcoal and bone. Not dramatic symbols, just dots and bars. Maya math. Their base 20 number system is deceptively simple dots, for ones, bars for fives. It's beautiful, clean, and easy to read unless, of course, you're trying to count beyond 400 without a diagram, in which case it becomes a very sleepy form of interpretive dance. One elder explains in the slow, patient tone used for small children and wandering strangers that eclipses are not magic, they're math. Cycles. If you watch long enough, everything repeats. The sky tells its stories in intervals. He draws 3 dots, then a bar. That's 8, he says. He adds a shell-shaped glyph beneath it. 0. Start again. This, he tells you, is how the priests calculated today's event, with long rows of numbers, with calendar rounds, with patient generations copying observations until patterns emerged, and most charmingly, without ever inventing the number 11 as we know it. Another elder joins in, pointing at the sky. When the sun stands in front of the Firestone star, and the moon sits behind the owl mark, then the shadow begins. You nod. You have no idea what that means, but you nod. The younger apprentices nearby are less poetic. They're playing a game where they slap pebbles into numbered pits in the ground, practicing math by tricking each other into bad trades. One boy loses a handful of cacao beans and claims the eclipse distracted him. No one believes him. Historians still debate how much Maya math filtered into daily life. Was it the realm of astronomer priests only, or did farmers and traders use it too? Evidence leans toward the latter, with market exchanges, timekeeping, and even sports scores logged using dot-bar glyphs. The gods, after all, weren't the only ones who liked to keep track. Nearby, a woman is shelling beans with rapid precision. Her daughter sits beside her drawing spirals in the dirt with a stick. The spirals loop and loop, no beginning, no end. When you compliment the pattern, the girl grins and says, "It's the sun's daydream." You pause. That's either deeply poetic, or she's just repeating something her uncle said during a nap. As you rise to leave, you hear one of the elders muttering about how last year's eclipse prediction was slightly off, and how he had to apologize to 3 different deities and a very smug turtle. He still doesn't think it was his math. Probably the turtle. Down the path, a group of youths have gathered around a woven mat covered in corn kernels arranged in lines. One of them is leading what appears to be an informal eclipse betting pool. I say it starts when the shadow touches the dog statue's nose, one says. No way, another argues. It'll be when the squirrel finishes eating the tamale. They all glance toward a squirrel halfway through a pilfered snack. It looks very focused. Tension rises. The squirrel pauses, drops the tamale, decides it prefers pumpkin. Betting voided. Back at the village square, the light has taken on that strange clarity that only comes before something big still full, but somehow thinner, like you're seeing the world through river water. One of the elders shades his eyes with a hand and announces 37 steps until it begins. Everyone nods solemnly. No one knows what that means. The apprentice from earlier suddenly bolts past you, arms flailing, chanting. The cycles align. The sky dances again. He skids to a halt near the temple base, gasps for breath, and proceeds to make up a chant on the spot that rhymes celestial with vegetable. Honestly, it kind of works. A group of older women sit weaving in silence, their fingers quick and unbothered. One of them hums a tune with no rhythm and no words. When asked if she's worried about the coming dark, she says, "The sun always comes back. But my loom, that thread's a menace." Nearby, a stone mason continues shaping a jaguar face into a lintel beam. He pauses only once to wipe sweat from his brow and mutter, "I've worked through 4 eclipses. None of them paid me extra." The village dog, remember him, starts to whine and pace. He circles the same basket 3 times, then lies down with a dramatic sigh. He knows. He always knows. A parrot squawks from the rooftop of the shrine. Dark soon, it yells, then immediately switches to, "Where's my gourd?" It's unclear whether the parrot is a prophet or just deeply committed to lunch. As you settle beside the temple steps, someone hands you a folded leaf with 2 roasted cacao beans inside. For the shadow, they say, to keep it sweet. You glance at the sky. The edge of the sun is now just beginning to blur, as if a soft thumb is smudging the light. The moment is nearly here. And yet, nobody panics. Nobody even stops weaving, because for all the math, all the predictions, all the chants and myths and bean-counting bets, this is just another page in a very old book, one they've already read. You barely have time to adjust the leaf you're sitting on before a soft, unsure howl floats into the air. The village dog is on his feet again, ears up, tail twitching. He lets out another low moan, somewhere between a warning and a complaint. Several people glance over, not alarmed, just vaguely entertained. One of the older women calls out, "He always does this. He thinks he's in charge of the sun." You look up. The change is obvious now. The light, once golden and lazy, has dulled into something cooler, almost metallic. Shadows stretch and warp like they're unsure where to go. Colors flatten. Even the birds seem to blink a little slower. It's as if the world is gently holding its breath. The dog howls again, louder this time. A few other animals begin to stir. A pair of parrots flutter to a lower perch. A lizard darts under a stone slab, clearly not interested in participating in celestial events. You wander toward the edge of the village, where the jungle presses in thick and sweet-smelling. A boy is crouched near the path with a basket of carved wooden amulets. He offers you one with the serious air of a merchant who knows the value of an impending sky event. "This one keeps the sun brave," he says. "It's shaped like a small turtle." You take it. Behind you, someone starts humming a slow tune. 3 notes, then silence, then 3 notes again. The kind of rhythm that feels older than words. People begin to gather not in a crowd, but in gentle clusters. No pushing, no center stage, just shared space. A few children chase the edge of the shifting shadow, giggling as it crawls over the stones. One of them stops suddenly, eyes wide. "The moon is eating the sun," she whispers. A grandfather nearby chuckles. "Only a nibble. He'll grow it back." The dog barks once sharply, then sits. Everyone glances at him. He stares at the sky like a prophet having second thoughts. Now, the Maya didn't believe the world would end during an eclipse. Not really. But there were tales. Stories of sky serpents of gods turning their faces of jaguars stalking the stars. Some claimed that if you whistled during an eclipse, you might summon a ghost. Others warned not to stare directly at the sun, though mostly because it gave you headaches and made you miss your chores. Historians still debate whether the Maya believed eclipses were signs of doom or simply reminders from the gods to pay attention. Some glyphs suggest rituals were held during eclipses. Others, not a single fuss. It may have depended on the city-state, the century, or even just the village gossip mill. One man tells you the gods use eclipses to test who's really watching. He taps the side of his nose meaningfully, then trips over a root. Down by the weaving hut, a woman squints skyward and mutters, "Almost time. Better flip the tortillas." She heads to the hearth, calm as a cloud. The light dims further. This time, it's unmistakable. The whole world has the look of twilight filtered through river water. You feel it on your skin, a coolness not from the air, but from something missing, a hole in the warmth. The sun isn't gone, but it's different, distant. The dog stands again, hackles raised, then he sneezes. A burst of laughter erupts from the group near the shrine. "That's his sign?" someone says, wiping tears from their eyes. "He always sneezes when the sky flips." Someone else asks if the dog's sneeze means they're safe. "Of course," another replies. "Unless he sneezes twice, then we're doomed." All eyes turn to the dog. He lies down. Everyone breathes out. The eclipse continues. You look up. Through a sliver of leaves, the crescent sun peeks out, no longer round, but delicately curved like a bite has been taken from it. No fanfare, no thunder, just quiet awe. And a very loud parrot yelling, "Where's the moon?" over and over again. Somewhere near the riverbank, a boy starts banging two gourds together rhythmically. It's not part of a ritual. He just likes the sound. A few people tap along with him, using bowl stones or the occasional lazy clap. It becomes a strange, beautiful chorus of not quite music. The dog yawns. You look down at your little turtle amulet. Its eyes are uneven. Its legs are lopsided. But somehow, it feels protective, like it's holding on to the last bit of sunlight for you just in case. Nearby, a woman offers you a cup of something warm and spicy. Cacao with chili and honey. Keeps your stomach from flipping when the sky does, she says. You sip. It's delicious. It tastes like safety. As the sun shrinks further, the shadows curl in on themselves, and time seems to slow. The village doesn't fall silent. It never does. But the sounds soften. Conversations taper off. Movements become slower. A baby stops fussing. A man stops pacing. Even the squirrels freeze for a moment on their tree branches mid-crunch. The dog lifts his head one last time. No bark, no growl, just a sigh. You lie back on a smooth stone and close your eyes for a breath. And in that breath you feel it. The stillness, the moment, the sun and moon meet. And the world goes dim, and everything, just for a second, waits. There's a lull, not silence exactly, because life in this village never truly goes silent. But a deep collective pause, like the entire place is between heartbeats. You're sitting near the hearth now, where a woman named Ixtun is watching her flat griddle like it owes her rent. She's already flipped 3 tortillas with alarming speed and precision, and she's working on a 4th, glancing at the sky, only to mutter, "Don't overdo it, son." She slides a tortilla your way. It's hot, slightly charred around the edges, and smells like home, even if your home has never once smelled like fresh maize and cumin. You tear off a piece as the light shifts again, a deeper shadow creeping in around the corners of the day. Ixtun squints upward. "Now this is the worst part," she says. "The young ones always forget to tend the fire during an eclipse." You glance around. Sure enough, 3 apprentices are standing in a huddle near the courtyard, debating which of them should add more wood to the cooking fire. One says it's unlucky to touch fire while the sun is sleeping. Another claims the last one who tried it during an eclipse stubbed their toe for 3 days straight. The third just shrugs and says he's too full. Ixtun rolls her eyes. Idiots, she says, tossing a small bundle of dried sticks into the coals herself. The flames sputter and then grow, casting a reddish glow over her face as the daylight continues to fade. Your tortilla is still warm in your hands when you notice a funny thing. Everyone's kind of calm. Too calm. You'd expect excitement, or at least confusion, but the only tension in the air comes from a young girl struggling to remember the correct pinch gesture to fold tamales properly. In Maya culture, cooking is sacred, but not solemn. It's infused with stories passed down like recipes embroidered on your tongue. And during an eclipse, it's still cooking time, still life. You offer to help. Ixtun gives you a small bowl of dough and nods toward the grinding stone. You kneel down. It's harder than it looks. Your wrist already regrets this, and your dough looks more like a confused pancake than anything edible. She leans over. No, like this. Her hands guide yours, firm but patient. You feel the rhythm, press, roll, press again. She hums a low tune as she works something with no words and probably thousands of years behind it. Above you, the shadows deepen further. A strange twilight settles over the world, a kind of non-light that turns green leaves silver and makes faces look sleepier than they are. Ixtun glances at the sky again. He's almost done with his nap, she says. Who? The sun god. Kinich Ahau. He closes his eyes for a little while, dreams of music, and then he blinks back awake. You nod. The dough is soft in your hands, now easier to shape. You even manage something vaguely circular. Ixtun takes one look and says, "It's enthusiastic," and tosses it on the fire anyway. Around the hearth, others begin to gather, those who had paused their work, their weaving, their writing, their gossiping, not to perform a ritual, just to share food. It's what people do when the sky feels strange. One man passes a bowl of something rich and dark beans, slow cooked with cacao and chili. Another shares pickled onions wrapped in a palm leaf. There's no feast, no ceremony, just an understanding. If the sun decides to stay gone, you might as well go out with a full belly. One girl leans on her mother's arm and says, "I thought the sky would scream." Her mother pats her head. Only if you listen too hard. The dog wanders by, hopeful, and gets a crust of tortilla for his patience. He sniffs the ground, then sighs deeply, as if to say, "This is why I barked earlier." You chew slowly, letting the taste sit on your tongue. The world is dim now, not fully dark, not yet, but dim in a way that feels like being underwater. Everything muted, everything waiting. A baby begins to fuss, then is quickly soothed with a song. A few people begin softly drumming again, this time on the overturned base of a clay bowl. No one really plays in rhythm, but it doesn't matter. Historians still argue whether eclipse rituals involve music, sacrifice, fasting, or none of the above. Some cities probably made a show of it. Others just gathered around the fire and told each other the sun was only pretending to leave. Ixtun sets another tortilla in your hand. You eat, she says. The sun likes full people. You ask if there's anything special they do during the exact moment of eclipse. Sometimes we blow smoke, she says, pointing at a small pile of copal resin waiting to be burned. But not always. Sometimes we just finish lunch. In the flickering firelight, faces look more ancient, more peaceful. The wrinkles of elders mirror the lines carved into stelae. The shadows from the eclipse dance across their cheeks, like old stories coming back for a moment's visit. The wind picks up just slightly, but enough to lift a few leaves and flutter someone's scarf. A whispering breeze like a sigh from the sky itself. Someone lets out a yawn, a real one, contagious. Within seconds at least, 3 others have joined in. Even the dog yawns again, tongue flopping sideways. You finish your tortilla. It was imperfect, uneven, slightly undercooked, and absolutely delicious. Ixtun smiles at you. See, the gods don't care about the shape, just the effort. As you sit back, the eclipse edges toward its height, and nobody's running, nobody's afraid. They're just chewing. The moment arrives, not with a bang, but with a pause, so delicate, so complete, that it's almost eerie in its gentleness. The eclipse reaches its peak. The light is wrong now. Not dark exactly. No darkness has edges. This doesn't. It's the kind of gray that makes everything look like it belongs in a forgotten dream. You glance at your hands. They're pale-shadowed, otherworldly. The fire still glows, steady and orange, but the world around it feels like it's floating. Someone lets out a soft huh. Not exactly reverence. Not exactly confusion. Just a small vocal shrug at the strangeness of it all. The village holds still. Not in fear, not even in awe, more like in the way people pause when a familiar song suddenly plays in a new key. Like the world you knew is still here, but has forgotten its melody for a few beats. Ixtun stands up, brushes maize flour from her hands, and lights a small bundle of copal. The resin sputters, then curls into a thick smoke, fragrant and sweet. She waves it slowly through the air, not in sweeping ritual arcs, but in lazy figure eights, like she's drawing something. Only the smoke will understand. The baby, who had fussed earlier, lets out a delighted giggle. You glance around. No one is doing anything grand. No one is dancing. No one is beating drums, tearing clothes, or wailing at the heavens. Instead, a man leans back on one elbow and mutters, "Bit overcast today." Someone else replies, "Yeah, but at least it's cooler." The apprentice scribe runs past you with a scroll in hand, nearly tripping over a basket of chilies. He shouts. The shadow touches the edge of the great date tree and then gasps dramatically as if he's announcing the fall of an empire. The elder from earlier looks up from his grinding stone and says, "That happens every eclipse. Sit down." The apprentice, undeterred, flops onto the ground with theatrical exhaustion. This is the real charm of it all. The Maya don't greet an eclipse with terror or spectacle. They greet it with familiarity. Like an old cousin, visiting unannounced, you make room, pour a drink, and carry on. A woman adjusts her scarf in the dim light, grumbling that her embroidery thread looks completely different now. "It's supposed to be jade green," she says, "not frog with a fever green." Another woman snorts. "Just tell people it's eclipse dyed. They'll believe anything if you look serious." A group of children are playing with a spinning top carved from bone, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. One girl declares that if it keeps spinning through the eclipse, the gods will grant them double dessert. The top immediately topples. Everyone groans. In one corner, someone has set out a bowl of salt and is watching the shadows fall across it. You ask why. "To see if the taste changes," he says. "Does it?" "No," he admits. "But it gives me something to do while I wait." There's something deeply peaceful about how undramatic it all is. The Maya know the sun will return. The math told them. The stories told them. The birds told them. Even the dog is now napping again, nose tucked under one paw, like he's done his cosmic duty and is off the clock. You lie back on a stone bench and look at the sky. The sun is now a silver ring behind a veil. The moon has stepped in front, but with no malice, just passing through. A celestial shrug. Historians still argue whether Maya cities held coordinated eclipse rituals. Some texts speak of synchronized drumming, or coordinated smoke offerings, or quiet meditations. But here, there's no theater, just presence. The wind picks up, just a bit. It brings with it the scent of tamales and crushed leaves, and a faint whiff of someone burning their tortillas again. Every eclipse Ixtun mutters, staring at the smoke curling from her griddle. A man walks by and announces to no one in particular, "My foot feels weird." Might be the eclipse. A woman behind him replies, "Or maybe it's the gourd you dropped on it." Still counts. A few people start softly clapping, not in applause, but as a beat. The kind you tap while thinking. Someone hums along. Someone else plays a shaky flute note and then stops embarrassed. Laughter follows low and kind. The apprentice scribe rises again, brush in hand, and begins sketching the scene in his notebook. The crescent of the sun, the dogs asleep, the woman flipping tortillas in the half-light, and maybe, just maybe, a ghostly figure in the clouds. He's still convinced there's a message in all of this, that the alignment of stars and sun and shadow is more than math, that something hidden is peeking through whispering, "Don't miss this." But the elders just smile. They've seen it before. They'll see it again. One reaches into a pouch and pulls out a small carved jade piece, a sun symbol rounded and serene. He holds it up to the dimmed sky, then puts it away again without a word. The eclipse is still here, the sun still hidden, but the village very much awake, very much at ease, and very much ready for seconds. As the eclipse lingers at its peak, and the light hovers somewhere between dusk and memory, the village shaman finally makes an appearance. He arrives not with a bang or even a chant, but with a delicate sneeze. "Too much copal smoke," he says, waving a hand in front of his nose. He's small, round, in the way that only a man confident in his importance can be, and adorned with just enough feathers to be taken seriously, but not enough to trip over. The crowd parts slightly as he ambles toward the center of the village. Not out of fear or awe, just polite respect, and maybe a bit of curiosity. You can tell from the murmurs around you that no one's quite sure what he's going to do. Last time, it was a dance involving a gourd and a very confused parrot. No one wants a repeat of that. He stands before the village altar eyes, squinting upward to the soft, eclipse-shadowed sky, and mutters, "Huh, on time." A child nearby asks, "What if it's not the same sun that comes back?" The shaman smiles and winks. Then we just act surprised. With that, he begins his ritual. It's not what you expected. There's no dramatic music, no flashes of divine light, no booming invocation to the heavens. Instead, he lights a small cone of copal resin on a stone plate, producing a lazy ribbon of smoke that twists and curls like it's got nowhere else to be. Then he reaches into a pouch and pulls out a slightly overripe avocado. He places it carefully beside the incense and taps it twice. You wait. Nothing happens. He turns to the crowd and says, "This represents the moon." Someone stifles a giggle. Another villager whispers, "It was supposed to be a stone." He forgot the stone again. The shaman pretends not to hear. He begins humming softly, tunelessly, like a bee that's had too much honey. He waves his hands over the smoke and closes his eyes. For a moment, you almost feel something sacred stirring. Then he sneezes again. Right onto the ceremonial gourd, Ixtun, watching from the tortilla station, mutters every time. The crowd doesn't laugh exactly, but they do release the sort of collective exhale reserved for those moments when you realize that even the most official people sometimes forget what they're doing halfway through. But here's the thing no one minds. Not really, because the ritual isn't about drama. It's about rhythm, about marking the moment, about reminding the sun that someone noticed he left, even if that someone just blessed a fruit. The shaman finishes with a flourish, waving his arms in a circle, then collapsing onto a bench like he's just delivered a prophecy. A nearby boy offers him a small cup of cacao. He accepts it with the grace of a man who's just done absolutely nothing and knows it. A woman leans over to you and whispers, "Last time he used a squash. Said it was more lunar." You nod solemnly as if this is valuable scientific data. Historians still debate what eclipse rituals actually looked like. Some glyphs suggest elaborate offerings, bloodletting incense song. Others depict small domestic altars, tiny sun discs, beside moon figurines, maybe a bowl of corn. There's evidence for both pageantry and simplicity, and this village clearly leans toward the latter, with a side of mild improvisation. The shaman, now visibly more relaxed, begins chatting with an elder about a dream he had last night involving a snake and a ladder made of sweet potatoes. It's unclear if this is a cosmic vision or just indigestion. The villagers begin to drift back to their routines. A few young boys resume a game involving bean seeds and a pattern scratched into the dirt. A woman begins washing bowls with water from a clay jug, humming a slow melody. You hear someone shout. The dogs moved and all eyes swing to the village hound, now repositioned near the fire. He yawns, scratches his ear, and resumes his nap. A collective murmur. We're good. The apprentice scribe, ever eager, runs to the shaman. Should I record this? He asks, scroll and brush at the ready. The shaman blinks. Record what? The ritual. The shaman considers. Right, it went fine. And maybe draw the avocado a little thinner. The apprentice scribbles furiously. You meander back toward the marketplace where the parrot is now chanting bright, soon as if announcing the second act of a play no one paid to see. The light is still odd, but subtly changing. The edge of the shadow is beginning to peel away. The sun, drowsy and undecided, is thinking about coming back. Someone's stomach growls. Another person offers dried mango to whoever heard it. As the crowd disperses, the shaman stands again and claps twice. The gods are satisfied, he says, or at least indifferent. A pause. Then he adds, either way, we've done our part. And you know what? He's right. Because even if the ritual was weird, even if the sacred object turned out to be a piece of produce, even if the parrot upstaged him, it was a moment. A marker. A way to say, hey, son, we noticed. The villagers noticed too. And now that noticing is done, it's time to sweep the plaza. Brooms. Everywhere brooms. The moment the shaman declares the gods appeased, or at least not annoyed, there's a quiet shift in focus. The smoke still curls lazily from the incense dish. The sun's crescent is just beginning to return. And yet the first thing half the village does is grab a broom. Not dramatic, ornate brooms. Just good, sturdy bundles of stiff palm or reed tied together with woven cord, perfect for swiping away maize husks, crushed leaves, and the occasional rebellious gourd seed. You glance around. There's no command given. No one shouts. It's clean-up time. but it's clear. When the sky resets itself, so does the village. A girl starts brushing the edges of the temple steps, singing softly under her breath. You can't make out the words, but it sounds cheerful, like a tune for work that doesn't mind being repeated 500 times. A man at the plaza's edge clears the space near the central altar, carefully sweeping in wide, circular motions. Around him, others follow suit, moving in spirals, straight lines, slow arcs. It's less about tidiness and more about balance, a physical way of syncing the ground with the sky again. And here you thought a cosmic event would end in wild feasts or whispered omens. But no, here, the aftermath is all about brooms and beans. Speaking of which, a group of children sits cross-legged nearby, counting beans into different piles. One pile is before the dark, and the other is after the dark. No one's entirely sure what to do with the middle pile, which represents during. One child insists they're special beans now. Another says they're cursed and shouldn't be touched. They compromise by eating them. At a low stone table, two women sort through woven goods left out during the eclipse. See, this one says, holding up a cloth. The colors look deeper now. It's the same cloth, the other replies. Yes, the first one says with a knowing nod. But better. You pause beside a boy, reorganizing clay pots, by size, purpose, and for reasons known only to him, whether or not they contain secrets. He taps one and leans in. This one holds thunder. He hands it to you. You hear nothing. You nod anyway. Across the square, someone is repainting the faded corner of a mural, a jaguar chasing the sun across a line of mountains. The painter hums and dabs with the same brush used last week to paint ceremonial toenails. Multi-purpose tools are a cornerstone of village efficiency. The apprentice scribe is still buzzing from the ritual. He's now writing a new poem about the sacred dust of celestial sweeping, which rhymes broom with gloom-loom and questionably baboon. He's very proud. One of the elders watches the sky quietly. The crescent sun is growing fuller, now light stretching longer shadows again. He mutters, "There it is." He remembered to come back. Historians still wonder what the Maya believed happened after an eclipse. Was it a reset? A sign? A second chance? While interpretations vary, there's one thing everyone agrees on. Normal life always returned. Not immediately. Not all at once, but steadily like sunlight, creeping back over a mountain ridge. You walk past a table where dried fruits are being resorted into jars. One of them is labeled with a glyph that, based on the giggling, may translate loosely to sun snacks. You don't ask. A man nearby is drawing shapes in the dust with the end of a broomstick. At first, they look random, but as he works, you realize he's drawing the eclipse. A wide circle with a crescent cut from it, then a smaller circle next to it, then little feet, then a jaguar holding a fish. He looks at you. It's a metaphor. You nod. Of course it is. A few boys are now chasing each other, with sticks claiming to be sun warriors, fighting off the sky serpent. The one pretending to be the serpent makes surprisingly accurate hissing noises and is doing a lot of dramatic tumbling. At one point, he flops onto the stone path and declares, "I am defeated." Then when no one responds, I said, "I am defeated." Still nothing. He sighs, gets up, and switches teams. The parrot on the shrine yells back to work, which causes an elder to mutter that bird has seen too many eclipses. And maybe it has. The light grows warmer. The colors deepen. The world is slowly letting go of its soft silver veil. The eclipse is ending. A woman hangs a pot over the fire, boiling something that smells faintly of herbs fruit and what might be cinnamon. She stirs slowly, staring into the pot like it contains all the answers. Or, at least lunch. A child nearby asks, "Do the gods eat during eclipses?" The woman replies, "They snack." Another child, without looking up, says, "Then they must have had my banana." The apprentice scribe walks by and announces he's writing a dramatic saga called The Daylight Dipped. His friends are less impressed. One suggests Shadow Nibble, a lyrical complaint. This sparks a 5-minute argument and a side bet involving cacao beans. The village doesn't quite return to normal. Not yet. There's a softness in the air, a kind of hum beneath the usual rhythm. The kind that lingers after something important happens, even if it looked like nothing much at all. You sit back down near the now tidied hearth. Ixtun hands you another tortilla. "He's almost all the way back," she says, nodding at the sun. "Did you miss him, you ask?" She shrugs. "He didn't take long." And just like that, the brooming continues. The sun is more than halfway returned, now climbing steadily back into its usual brilliance, like someone waking from a well-earned nap. The light isn't quite right yet, but it's on its way, warmer, bolder, beginning to take up space again. You feel it stretch across your skin like a blanket being pulled back over the day. Around you, the village begins to stretch too. A boy untangles a hammock near the riverbank, slapping at a mosquito, mid-yawn. He waves you over. "Best time for resting," he says, swaying a little as he climbs in. The world's slower after an eclipse. You take a seat nearby on a flat stone still warm from the sun's earlier presence. The jungle is still hushed, but not silent. Birds chirp again in uncertain bursts. A frog croaks in the distance, followed immediately by a second frog who sounds less committed to the idea. Just behind you, 2 elders sit in the shade of a broad-leaf tree, cracking open tamarind pods and reminiscing. One says this eclipse reminded him of the one 40 years ago, the one with the loud rooster. The other insists that eclipse was 20 years ago, and the rooster wasn't loud, just opinionated. The debate is interrupted by the return of the parrot, who has apparently taken flight and now returns triumphant, yelling, "I saw it," over and over until someone offers it a piece of fruit to shut it up. Farther along the edge of the village, a few people gather under the open sky to share myths. Eclipse stories specifically. This is where the good stuff comes out. Half-remembered tales passed down in whispers, often conflicting, never corrected. One man begins, "They say, when the moon eats the sun, it forgets its own name. That's why it gets smaller afterward. It's ashamed." A woman replies, "No, no, the moon eats the sun because it's in love. But it's shy, so it gives it back." Then, an old woman with a voice like dried maize husks chimes in wrong. "It's a sky serpent. He tries to eat the sun, but the people below make enough noise, burn enough smoke, and shake their cooking pots just enough to make him cough it up." She looks at you. You were part of it. You helped. You nod solemnly. You did stir that pot of beans earlier. That counts. Historians still argue how literal these myths were to the Maya. Were they metaphor memory? Did they believe in cosmic serpents? Or were the stories ways to pass the time while waiting for the sun to do its thing? Some scholars argue that myth and math lived side by side, not contradicting each other, but complementing balancing like shadow and light. One younger girl raises her hand. I had a dream during the eclipse, she says. A jaguar was chasing a rabbit, but the rabbit had wings and flew away. Sounds like you need less chili before bed, someone says gently, but the old woman smiles. Or maybe you'll be a storyteller next. Another story emerges, this one claiming the gods test people during eclipses by hiding the sun to see who remembers to be kind. You must behave even in shadow, a man says, because the gods see better in the dark. A few children take this very seriously. One immediately offers their half-eaten mango to a sibling. The sibling accepts and immediately drops it. A mutual shrug still counts. Meanwhile, under a canopy of vines, two teens are weaving eclipse-inspired bracelets. One weaves jade-colored thread with yellow murmuring. This is for the sun. The other adds black and silver beads. This is for the shadow that passed and didn't stay. The bracelets are a bit lumpy. They'll be worn proudly. You stroll toward the back of the village near the edge, where cultivated fields give way to thick jungle. The scent of soil and old bark is strong here. A man leans against a tree, sharpening a tool with lazy focus. Sky feels heavier today, he says without looking up. Not bad. Just like it dropped something. A child nearby is tying feathers to a stick. It's a sun chaser, she explains. If it runs fast enough, it can catch the light. Has it worked, you ask? Not yet, she says. But I haven't tried it during lunch. Back at the central plaza, the apprentice scribe has now gathered several children and is doing dramatic retellings of the day's events with minor embellishments. According to him, the shaman's sneeze summoned a protective wind spirit. The village dog fought off the shadow with a heroic yawn, and the parrot briefly ascended to the status of sky messenger. The children eat it up. One girl leans on your leg and whispers, "What did you see?" You pause. You could tell her about the math, about the sun's perfect timing, the moon's precise orbit, the alignment predicted by generations of stargazing and calculated calendars. But instead, you say, "I saw the world blink." And no one panicked. She nods. "Because we had tortillas." You nod back. "Exactly." Around you, the light is nearly back to normal. The eclipse is ending its presence, fading, not with fireworks or revelations, but with sleepy stretches and soft laughter. In the fields, workers begin to return. Chickens resume their gossip. A goat bleats like it just woke from a nap. The rhythm resumes not in triumph, but in ease. Nothing changed. Everything changed. And the village, it noticed, and then kept going. You take the long way back through the village, down a path lined with mossy stones, and the occasional wandering chicken, as the last veil of the eclipse lifts from the world. The light returns fully, not in a rush, but like a curtain being slowly pulled aside by an invisible, polite hand. The sky is wide open again, bright and blue, and acting like nothing ever happened. And yet it feels different. Not louder or faster, just reassembled. As if all the puzzle pieces have been shaken gently back into place. The shadows are no longer stretched and uncertain. They are crisp, real, familiar. At the edge of the square, a woman hangs up the last of her dyed cloths on a line strung between two carved poles. They flutter slightly in the breeze, a mosaic of eclipse colors, burnt orange, smoky gray, cloudy jade. She steps back and smiles. Brighter now, she says to no one in particular. You pass a boy poking at a bowl of tamales, as if waiting for them to do something cosmic. They taste different now, he says firmly. They saw the sky change. You take a bite, it tastes like tamale, but you nod anyway. A young man is sweeping near the base of the temple again, but this time with a little extra flourish, tossing in the occasional spin move. "Eclipse dance," he says with a grin. Very advanced. The apprentice scribe walks by with another scroll tucked under his arm. "I've decided to write an epic poem," he announces. 50 verses. Working title: The Shadow, Kissed the Sun, and Nothing Caught Fire. An elder nearby replies, "Good. Just make sure you spell eclipse the same way each time this time. You make your way back to the same stela you sat by earlier in the day, the one etched with centuries of names, symbols, and possibly some old market tax records, disguised as myths. The stone is warm again. The heat has returned with the light. You sit down. In the distance, the dog rolls over in his sleep, clearly unconcerned now that the day is behaving itself again. The parrot has switched to chirping, back to work, followed by, 'Where's my gourd?' on loop. Normalcy restored. A few villagers pass by nodding at you like you're just part of the scenery now. One offers you a cup of something tart and fruity made from a jungle berry you can't pronounce. It's cool and slightly fermented. Delicious. To celebrate, she says. You stayed until the end. You raise the cup slightly in the direction of the sky, as if toasting the returning sun. It's already blazing again. No memory of its brief departure. No sign of its hiding place. Just full hot and unapologetically itself. Nearby, children are drawing in the dirt again, this time sketching the sun's different shapes, full, half-crescent gone. One adds a little face to each version, ranging from sleepy to slightly annoyed. You point to the annoyed one. That's the part when the sun had to wait for the moon to move, the child explains seriously. One of the elders chuckles. Even the sun gets stuck in traffic. The group of storytellers begins to disband. Scarves are packed up, baskets collected, hands dusted. One woman looks to the sky and murmurs, "It was a good one, better than the last someone asks." She considers, "Fewer bugs." So yes, you look out over the village, which has shifted gently back into motion. Weaving looms clack again in the distance. Smoke rises from stoves. Someone is coaxing a stubborn goat away from a newly replanted garden. You hear a splash near the well, and a child's laugh echo through the trees. Everything is as it was, but softer, like a page that's been turned with care. Historians will wonder centuries from now what happened during this eclipse. They'll scan the glyphs, examine the codices, marvel at the precision of the predictions. But they won't see the dog's sneeze, or the girl's sky serpent drawing, or the avocado used in place of a sacred moonstone. They won't hear the laughter, or the casual shrug, or the parrot's poorly timed commentary. They'll read about rituals and math. They might even read about you, but they won't know the way the village felt gently amused by the sky's tricks, wholly unshaken by its games, and firmly rooted in the rhythm of tortilla flips, bean sorting, and stories passed down like soft clay. As the sun climbs higher, its rays now bold and ordinary, the eclipse begins to fade from memory. Except it doesn't, because in a place like this, where time moves in circles and stories are truths dressed in feathers, nothing really fades. It just becomes part of the pattern, and someone somewhere is already preparing for the next one, just in case the sun gets bored again. The sun, now fully restored to its usual gleaming self, stretches high across the sky, like a lazy cat reclaiming its sunbeam. No trace of the eclipse remains, no weird shadows, no silver haze, Not even the slightly flattened sound the village had worn like a cloak all day. It's just day again, but different. Not because the world has changed, but because you've seen it pause. A group of young boys pass you kicking a bundle of dried leaves like a ball already shouting about who scored what during their eclipse game. One insists he scored during totality and therefore deserves double points. Another says that only counts if the dog barks. There's a heated debate. The dog, for the record, continues to nap. Undisturbed, a pillar of sleepy wisdom. At the edge of the village, a few elders gather in the shade of a large ceiba tree. They talk about the upcoming planting season, the likelihood of early rains, and which nephew is most likely to forget his offering on May's festival day. Nothing about the eclipse, not because it wasn't meaningful, but because it fit. The Maya don't separate the sky from the earth the way you might. Their gods walk in footprints, dream in cooking fires, hide behind eclipses for fun. A cosmic event isn't outside of life, it's woven in, like a slightly more dramatic stitch in a cloth that's always being mended. You notice one of the women has already begun dyeing a new batch of thread. It's that strange eclipse gray, the kind that looks silver in some light blue in others. She dips it in, wrings it out, and nods to herself. It's a good color, she says. Matches the way the air felt. Another villager is carving tiny eclipse glyphs onto a piece of soft limestone. You peer over his shoulder. There's the sun, the moon, a few stylized lines that might be a wind god or just fancy filler. He adds a little turtle near the bottom, maybe for balance, maybe because turtles are funny. The apprentice scribe walks past muttering to himself. He's carrying no fewer than 4 scrolls and 3 quills tucked into his tunic, like a quetzal pretending to be organized. Sequel, he mumbles. Definitely needs a sequel. You follow the sound of laughter to a nearby courtyard where a group of children are reenacting the event with masks made of corn husks and paint. One child wears a large yellow disc on her head and stands very still. Another, wearing black cloth over his face, dances around her in circles. "I'm the moon," he yells. "You're blocking me," she replies. "Only a little." The parrot flies overhead and squawks. Again. You sit near the temple steps again, in the exact same spot you chose earlier in the morning, when the air was thick with anticipation and the codex was being unrolled. A different elder sits next to you now, chewing a piece of bark slowly. "Well," he says, without looking at you, "did it live up to your expectations?" You think for a moment. There were no firestorms, no rips in the sky, no gods descending in shimmering robes. There was a dog sneeze, an avocado ritual bean debates, a tortilla lesson, and a deeply suspicious squirrel. Yes, you say? Completely. He nods once and says, "It usually does." Somewhere behind you, someone starts sweeping again. The rhythms return. Looms clack. Pots boil. The breeze rustles through the palm roofs. The village exhales, and yet there's still something lingering. A hum beneath the day. A reminder. Historians won't write about the girl who used eclipse shadow to color her scarf, or the boy who carved the sun into his sandal just to remember the shape of the light, or you, kneeling awkwardly, wrists sore from maize, grinding slightly sunburnt and oddly full of calm. But the village will remember, not with fanfare, just with more stories. A child walks past you dragging a stick in the dirt. He's drawing spirals. "I'll be grown by the next one," he says, not looking up. You ask how long that will be. He shrugs. Maybe 50 years. Maybe 5 naps. Depends on the sky. Someone nearby shouts that lunch is being served again, this time with extra beans for the victorious sun. No one argues. As you stand to leave the plaza, you glance up once more at the fully returned sun, burning steady and golden in the sky. You squint at it for a second too long and feel the warmth on your skin. Not just heat, but presence. A promise kept, and below it, a village that didn't worry, that didn't panic, that cooked and swept, and told jokes and whispered stories and stood together. Because to them, this wasn't a disruption. It was a reminder that everything moves in circles, that light returns, that even the biggest events are just pauses between tortillas. And now, as we draw this story to a close, let your breath slow. The sun has returned, the village has resumed, and all is calm again. You've walked the slow, dusty paths of a world shaped by rhythm, by patience, by trust in the sky. The eclipse, so grand, so quiet, has passed, but its echo remains soft as the hush that follows laughter, steady as the grind of maize, stone on stone. You picture it now, the warm light flickering through palm fronds, the lazy smoke from morning fires, the soft shuffling of sandals on earth. You're lying beneath the broad sky again, your head heavy with stories, your heart somehow lighter. The sun above you is full golden ordinary, and that in its own way is extraordinary. A breeze stirs, lifting a leaf, brushing against your skin. The parrot has fallen silent. The dog is asleep again. The turtle amulet rests near your hand. All is well, all is well. Let the images fade now. Let the sound of tortillas flipping drift into the distance. Let the sky darken not in eclipse, but in sleep. The village is safe. The sun is steady. And you are tired. Close your eyes. The stories will still be here tomorrow. Sweet dreams.